Well, good morning and welcome to Elevenses once again. I'm Kevin Williams. This is show number 165. It's Sunday, the 22nd of August, and it's a fairly grey and miserable day on a fairly grey and miserable weekend here in London. You wouldn't know it's the middle of August and supposedly the middle of our summer. Anyway, on with the show. What have we got for you today? There's a fair amount of racing news, actually. We'll be looking at Carmarthen Council's new road safety campaign. We'll take a look at two cancellations of motorcycle races, the Suzuka 8 Hours and the Malay Grand Prix. Maverick Vinales has been sacked with immediate effect by Yamaha. And we'll look at a brand new future factory, which is going up in India at the moment. We'll finish off with an item. Oh, yes, we've got the Fuchs Silkaline recyclable oil container. Nearly forgot that one. And then we'll finish off with a road safety sort of analysis of accidents. I'll be looking at overtaking issues. So we've got quite a lot to go on with today. As I say, if you've got any comments on the items, do drop me a line. I'll try and get to them during the show. If you've got any questions, ask away. And again, I'll try and answer them. If I can't answer them directly during the show, I'll get back to them at the end. And feedback on the show is always welcome. And of course, if you want me to cover any topics, do ask. I keep asking this and nobody ever sends me any topics to look at. So don't be shy. If there's anything you want me to talk about, I'm more than happy to try to do that. So who have we got in this morning? Nigel's looked in. Hi to you, Nigel. Paul's here. Hello, Paul. Sue's arrived and she says it's sunny in Sussex. Grrr. Well, it certainly isn't here. It's looking a little bit brighter than it did an hour ago, but hey-ho, no sun at the moment. Right, okay, so what have we got for you today? Well, let's have a quick look at the first picture of the day. Carmarthenshire County Council, their road safety team have installed some new yellow ride safely signs as part of a new campaign aimed at riders. Now, the initiative is in response to figures that show that there is a high prevalence of motorcycle casualties on Welsh roads. Not entirely surprising, given it's such a wonderful place to be riding, and hopefully I'll be out there myself in a couple of weeks' time doing a bit of motorcycling. Between 2017 and 2019, there were no less than 1,755 motorcycle casualties across Wales, and 743 of those were killed or seriously injured. So these signs have gone up at what the road safety team call key locations, reminding riders to take extra care. What else can I tell you about those? Well, Councillor Hazel Evans, who's the executive board member for the environment for the county, said we know some stretches of roads are particularly popular with bikers, so we've targeted these areas with new signage as a reminder to remember their safety. And she says every casualty is one too many. We all need to stay safe on our roads. Now, if you're out in Wales, you'll spot them along roads including the A4069, which goes between Llandovery and Llangadog. The A484, which is Hwyl to Bury Port, the B4304, Clenclawyd to Llanelli, and the A4066 from Lochern to Pendeen. I probably mangled the pronunciation of the Welsh names there. The signs also incorporate a grid reference sticker, and this is apparently to help emergency services pinpoint the exact location in the event of a crash, although I'm not entirely sure how this will actually work, because unless you crash directly under the sign, it's unlikely that somebody will think, oh, there was a sign half a mile back, I'll run back to it and see what the grid reference is. There are apps and things that you can get on your phone to do that. I might actually talk about that as a topic actually in another show. Carmarthenshire County Council also organise some road safety initiatives, which include a Dragon Rider Cymru free motorcycle rider training course, and of course there's Biker Down Cymru too. If you want to find out more about these, carmarthenshire.gov.wales/road safety is your place to head. Okay, so there we go. Just put that link up for you. You can follow that one. Right, so Paul has looked in to say hi. Hello, Paul. Good to see you. Okay, so what else have we got? Let's turn that banner off as well, which is still on the screen. Let's get rid of that. So, yeah, COVID is continuing to impact on motorcycle racing. Now, you may not be a motorcycle racing fan, but if you are, you'll probably be disappointed to know that the prestigious Suzuka 8-hour race in Japan has been cancelled. It was due to take place on November the 7th, but the worsening public health crisis in the country has caused the event to be cancelled. The good news is that the Endurance World Cup will actually get an additional race this year. This will happen, and I'm trying to get the picture up, but it's not working. Okay, there it is at last. Let's get that up on screen. Yes, so where were we? Endurance World Cup. Yes, the 2021 season to replace the Suzuka event. It's been extended to cover a race at Most in Czechoslovakia. So there'll be an 8-hour race there on Saturday, October the 9th. That'll be the fourth and final event of the year. The series kicked off with the 24 hours of Le Mans, and then there was the 12 hours of Estoril. The next event is the 24-hour Bol d'Or, which is on the 18th and 19th of September, which is back at the epic Paul Ricard circuit in the south of France. And I have to admit, I had hoped originally to go back to that race. I spent many happy years watching 24-hour racing at Paul Ricard after a long trek down from London. It always seemed to make a really nice end to the riding season. When I was a courier, it was to grab an extra week of summer in the south of France. It was almost inevitable the weather cracked by the time I got back from that race. Okay, the Suzuka 8-hour is planned to return July 2022, we're told. The second event to be axed due to the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic is the Malaysian Grand Prix, which would have been happening at Sepang, and that was scheduled for the 22nd and 24th of October. And that's the second consecutive year that the Malay Grand Prix has bitten the dust due to public safety restrictions. Once again, the organisers have moved swiftly to add an extra European race. The MotoGP circus will make a second visit to Misano and the circuit Marco Simoncelli, and that event will slot into those same 3 days, 22nd to 24th, at the end of October. Now, one rider who definitely won't be at Misano or anywhere else probably this year is Maverick Vinales. You'll recall that there were some interesting events goings on where he appeared to over-rev the motorcycle that he was riding, his Yamaha M1, at the Styrian Grand Prix. And the onboard footage appeared to show him over-revving the engine and then trying to blow it up. And Yamaha suspended him immediately, saying the incident put both the rider and other racers on the circuit at risk. Well, now they've gone a step further. Team principal Lynn Jarvis confirmed the not entirely unexpected news that he has actually been given the boot. In a brief statement, he said, in Assen, Yamaha and Vinales had originally announced their mutual decision to cut short the 2021-22 program and finish it at the end of 2021. A commitment was made by both rider and team to continue to the end of the current season, with the team guaranteeing its full support and the rider giving his maximum effort so we could finish the project in style. Regretfully, at the Styrian GP, the race did not go well or end well. Consequently, after deep consideration by both parties, the mutual decision was reached that it would be better for both parties if we end the partnership early. The early separation will release the rider to be free to follow his chosen future direction. It will also permit the team to focus its efforts on the remaining races of 2021 with a replacement rider yet to be determined. Now, one news report described Vinales' time with Yamaha as tumultuous, and certainly the relationship between Yamaha and the rider has collapsed over the course of the season. As was said, Vinales had already planned to leave Yamaha at the end of this year, halfway through a 2-year contract, but this puts paid to his season, at least as far as racing with the Japanese manufacturer Yamaha is concerned. Aprilia Racing announced that the Spaniard would be joining the team starting next year, and although the statements have been effusive in their welcome, they may now be wondering just who they've brought on board. If Vinales was frustrated by the Yamaha, he's not likely to find the Aprilia any more accommodating. There is, however, one good bit of news in all this for British racing fans, and it's that Cal Crutchlow will be filling Vinales' spot at Silverstone for the British Grand Prix. So, set reminder, Elevenses goes out at 11, oddly enough, on Sundays and Wednesdays, usually live. Occasionally I'd put a recorded show up, but normally we go out live. So you can also catch it on catch up after the event here on Facebook, or you can pop over and watch it on YouTube, where I put the recording up an hour or so after it goes out live here. Nick has also popped in. Good morning to you, Nick. Good to see you. Right, so here's a question that I think a lot of people may be asking. Is Japan's time as the sort of major centre of motorcycle design and production running out? If you'd have asked the question, where are most motorcycles built in 1960s, everybody would have said the UK and North America. But, by the 1980s, the UK industry was on its knees. It had virtually ceased production altogether. The US production had dropped right back as well, and Japan was undoubtedly the major centre of motorcycle production for the world. But things have changed. Already, many of the sort of bikes we consider to be Japanese are actually built outside Japan. Very few Hondas, for example, which we tend to think of as the epitome of Japanese engineering, are actually built in Japan anymore. But it's likely, it seems to me, that they're going to be losing their brand dominance too. I've talked on previous shows about how they appear to be lagging behind the Chinese when it comes to embracing electric motorcycles. But India is also making a big play to grab the future. And one company that's making a bigger grab than most is Ola Electric, because they are building the world's biggest motorcycle future factory, and it's capable of producing 10 million motorcycles a year if the design goes ahead as planned. That is a bike every 2 seconds. The carbon negative factory is planned to cover no less than 500 acres. That's considerably more than 250 football pitches. It'll house 10 production lines, and it'll have more than 3,000 robots installed. And according to reports, at full capacity, the factory would be capable of producing more than 1/7 of the entire global output of motorcycles at today's figures. So there is no doubt that India is a major player in the motorcycle industry, and it holds a huge stake already in the world market. But Ola Electric are really moving things up a notch. Now, right now, Ola are focused on the utility end of the market, and they're launching 2 new models of scooter, fantastically titled the S1 and S1 Pro. They're fairly typical of the breed. They have the classic under-seat storage that you would come to expect, with 36 litres no less, where you can tuck things away. The S1 Pro is roughly equivalent to a 125 petrol engine bike, produces 8.5 kilowatts of horsepower. that's a mixed term, isn't it? I don't know why I've written that. Kilowatts or horsepower, but not kilowatt horsepower. That doesn't make any sense at all. 8.5 kilowatts. Let's leave the horses out of it. Plus the usual crazy torque of an electric motor. There's 58 Newton meters of it, and that will push this little machine to 60 kph or 37 miles per hour in 5 seconds, and to an ultimate top speed of 115 kph, which is a fraction over 70 miles per hour. The range tops out at 180k or 110 miles, but as usual, that's likely to drop fairly significantly if you ride the bike flat out. The bike can be charged overnight via a wall socket or to half capacity in 18 minutes at a fast charger. The Pro model also gets voice control. Yes, it talks to you and you can talk to it. It gets cruise control, which is fairly interesting on a little scooter, hill hold, and a hyper riding mode, which presumably allows it to hit that top speed. Of course, we all know that electric motorcycles are expensive, don't we? Well, no, we don't. In fact, they're not. The price is expected to be $1,750, which is just under £1,300 at current rates. And if you go for the slower and the lower spec S1, it'll be just $1,345, which is a fraction under £1,000 in our money. Okay, if you enjoy the show, don't forget you can always support me over at coffee.com. The page over there, I have just finished putting up the whole of the 2018 Skills on Saturday, Tips on Tuesday series of better biking posts from my Facebook page here. The whole of those are now available. There's a bunch of those which are you can read them for nought, but if you generously donate me a coffee, you get access to the entire 100 articles, plus all the others from 2014, 2015, 2016, and 2017. So that's 500 better biking articles, and there's a bunch of other stuff over there which is free as well. So do pop over there, have a look at what you can read, and if you feel it's worth supporting me, feel free to do so. Right, okay. Fuchs Sulcaline have made a nod in the direction of the environment by packaging their oil in recyclable containers. Now, apparently these containers have been around since 2016, but it's the first time I've heard or seen the Lube Cube. So it appears that they are sort of relaunching them to try to get some more traction on them. Now, essentially, what you're getting is a 4-litre oil in a cardboard box. Let me just show you a picture of that as well. Here we go. There it is. That particular pack is a promotional pack which comes with a free 1-litre pouch as well. The 4-litre box is said to be a smart alternative to rigid plastic bottles, highly eco-friendly, as well as being easier to store and use. Well, I'll certainly give a vote to storage. Conventional oil containers are a bit of a pain to store. They're a fraction too high for my shelving unit, which is really annoying. The Lube Cubes have 100% recyclable corrugated cardboard outer, which gives it its rigidity, I hope, and a 98% recyclable inner. So they do have a significantly lower carbon footprint than other packaging, it's said. There's a small perforated area at the top of the cardboard box, which when you pull it away reveals a pop-out anti-glug spout. Now, hopefully the box is rigid enough not to bend when it's tilted, because the inner bag apparently collapses, ensuring maximum drainage of the product without air ingress, resulting in minimum waste and spills. Once empty, the box can be flattened, and then supposedly you can dispose of it in normal household waste. Though I have to say, I do have some slight concerns about residual oil in the container. It's never impossible to get it all out, and you're really not supposed to put oil, even clean oil, into household waste. But hey, there probably won't be too much in there. On the whole, it sounds like a pretty good idea, but I do have one issue. What do you do with your used engine oil that you've just drained out of your motorcycle? Well, what I do is I pour mine straight back into an empty container, and then I take that off to the recycling centre. Now, if, as stated, the inner bag collapses, I suspect that pouring sort of warm oil back into the empty container will actually be a little bit tricky. And then anyway, if you've done that, it still has to go off to the recycling centre. So the recyclable aspect of it is sort of slightly less useful. But I'm interested, if anybody's actually used these, do let me know. Now, onto the better biking item for today. Now, right at the top of the show, I mentioned that safety campaign from Carmarthen, and it's fairly typical of the type. It basically tells riders to do safe things without really telling them what things go wrong. Now, over the years, I've had many discussions on survival skills and in other places, including in a couple of road safety conferences, about what constitutes high risk activity on a motorcycle. Now, one simple way of defining safety is as the absence of risk. If you look up the dictionary definition, that's actually what it is. Now, it's pretty damned obvious that it's impossible to be 100% safe when riding. So really what we should be talking about is relative risk and relative safety. And we sit somewhere on a sliding scale between the two extremes. So what is actual risk? What do we define risk as? Well, it's something going wrong. And basically, an easy way to assess risk is to work out the chance that something could go wrong and then kind of multiply it by the consequences to us when it does go wrong. And if we do that, it's fairly obvious what constitutes high risk activities. For example, there's a reasonable chance of falling off your motorcycle by not putting the side stand down properly and trying to climb off at the same time. I've done that. I suspect most riders have done it at some point. But the consequences, well, unless you're very, very unlucky, you're just going to end up with a bike lying on top of you. It's not really likely to hurt too much. Cornering crashes. Well, again, think about what can go wrong. If we corner and run off the road on a right-hander, we've got a reasonable chance of getting away with it by running off the road onto grass or the embankment of some sort, or to even, sort of embed ourselves in a hedge. On one memorable occasion, I overshot a corner and went straight through an open gate into a field. So we've got a reasonable chance of getting away with that without seriously injuring ourselves. But think about running wide on a left-hander. If there's nothing coming the other way, we'll probably get away with it. But if we find a Scania approaching from the opposite direction, we really are in very big trouble indeed. So basically, we have to understand not just what can go wrong, but also how much it hurts. It's as simple as that. And that's the basic theory behind what's known as risk management. So the next stage is to try to recognize what is and what isn't risky behavior. And my own take on risk management is that if you actually look at crashes and you look at the frequency of crashes and then you look at the likely outcome of the crash if it does happen, the one that we really should be most afraid of is overtaking that goes wrong. Now, just have a quick look at this photo. Here we go. There we are. Overtaking is probably the most single dangerous maneuver we actually make on a motorcycle, because when it does go wrong, the consequences can be pretty terrifying. But most riders actually believe that if we use the right skills, if we use the right techniques, then overtaking is all under control and even perfectly safe. That's actually what a police instructor told me once. He said it's perfectly safe if it's done right. Now, is that actually true? Well, the answer is, of course, it isn't, because with an overtake, we're actually committed into a course of action, which by definition puts us into a conflicting position, potentially dangerous position. It's one into which we're nearly always accelerating, and it's one where we're nearly always carrying relatively high speed too. And finally, if it does go wrong, we've relatively little in the way of escape routes to take if we do make a mistake. Now, have a look at the photo there. What you're looking at is the remains of a blackbird. If you look closely, you'll just notice beside the left-hand exhaust pipe, the front wheel and mudguard of the motorcycle. The bike's forks were actually ripped off by the impact. Now, what happened is this, and I know what happened because my ex was actually the vehicle behind the crashing motorcycle. The first bike went into an overtake and was followed by two others. The first rider then panicked because suddenly there was a bend in front of him which he hadn't anticipated or came up on too fast. He locked the rear wheel up. I could see the skid mark quite clearly in the road, and he hit a car coming the other way. I could also see the skid marks that car left, and also there was a distinct sideways jig in the those skid marks where the bike actually impacted the car, plus of course a lot of debris on the road at that point. The car went off into a hedge. The driver suffered a sort of minor whiplash injuries. The bike obviously went down after the impact, but it landed back in the road right in front of the two following riders. And the Blackbird here was the first bike to hit the wreckage, which is what ripped the front forks off. The third bike somehow ended up in the field behind the fence. You can just see a fence post in that picture. Somehow the rider actually managed to catapult the bike clean off the road, over the verge, over the fence, and into a field. I have no idea quite how that happened, but it shows you how much energy that bikes carry when they're traveling at speed. Now, fortunately, nobody was killed. Three injured riders were all taken to hospital with fairly serious but not life-threatening injuries. But that was a consequence of somebody misjudging an overtake. And in this case, it was the riders who got it wrong. But one thing to always remember in an overtake is that we're usually relying on another road user to do precisely what we expect. So it's worth having a look at some data about overtaking crashes to try to work out just how risky they actually are. And it just happens that some years ago, my buddy Malcolm sent me some Lincolnshire Police Accident Investigation Unit figures which they'd researched from 1999 to 2000. Now, it's unlikely that things have dramatically changed since then. So I think we can fairly safely say that these figures are fairly representative. So 1999, the fatal accidents involved overtaking a car and the car turning right, loss of control in a right-hand bend and hitting a wall, overtaking on the wrong side of a solid line, hit an oncoming car, lost control on a left-hand bend, overtaking a car turned right, lost control on right-hand bend, lost control on left-hand bend and hit oncoming car, a car lost control and hit the rider, an overtaking car, the car turned right again, and lost control on the right-hand bend, and the final one was an overtaking car which hit an oncoming motorcyclist. So 11 crashes there, 9 of those the fault of the rider, and overtaking featured in 4 of the rider fault crashes. If we fast forward a year, we get not dissimilar data. Bike overtakes car as it turns left. Bike loses control on left-hand bend, hits Arctic. Bike approaches traffic lights at high speed, locks up and falls off. Bike overtakes car as it turns right. Car overtakes car and hits oncoming bike. Bike loses control on left-hand bend and hits car. Another same road actually, a few days later, another rider loses control on a left-hand bend. Bike overtakes tractor that's turning right. Bike lost control on left-hand bend and hit telegraph pole. Bike lost control on right-hand bend and hit hedge. Car pulled out from side road into path of rider. The 12th one was a loss of control crash. So there we are, 23 fatalities. 7 are overtaking. The majority of those are rider error. Only 1 is the classic Smidsy that we like to blame the drivers for killing motorcyclists for. So motorcycling overtaking crashes are clearly overrepresented in those safety stats. So how do we make overtaking safer? Well, the generally accepted advanced way, road safety way, is to learn how to make better overtakes. And we can make a big step in that direction by eliminating the most obviously dangerous overtakes. The ones past towards blind bends, for example, example, when you can't see what's coming the other way. Ones that are at high speed past multiple vehicles all at the same time, where another vehicle could pull out to overtake, or where there are places a vehicle could turn or emerge. We saw that as a high risk factor in those fatal crashes. And one of the situations in which riders get themselves into risky an environment, a risky riding environment, is a group ride. The simple thing to say there is don't follow the guy in front. Ride your own ride. If you're on a group ride, make your own decisions. Don't overtake because the rider in front has. And if you're worried about getting lost and they don't wait for you, well, go and ride with another group. Simple as that. But there's another step we can take, and this is the one I think that is much underrated and underreported and undersuggested. And that's basically to eliminate apparently safe but unnecessary overtakes. What do I mean by an unnecessary overtake? Well, it's something I used to see a lot when I was a courier. I would be bimbling along in the traffic and somebody would come up behind me, overtake me and all the other vehicles around me. And then a few minutes later, we'd get to a red traffic light and I'd catch them up. So I've done all the overtaking while everything's stationary. They've made a series of complex maneuvers with all the traffic moving. And particularly remember a rider I kept catching up on the way up to Banbury on one particular ride up the A40. Not the A40, I can't remember which one it is now. Not to worry, but there were several stops on the way, and every single time I caught the rider up, and he'd made half a dozen passes past cars and lorries and things, which I didn't have to do. So each of those was actually an unnecessary overtake. He might have snuck through a traffic light on green when I got caught by the red, but how far ahead was he? I watched a rider filtering through traffic on the M25 one day. He was probably in my vision mirrors and ahead for 7 or 8 minutes before he turned off. I calculated the time he'd actually saved on the road. It was actually about 15 seconds, but he had passed dozens and dozens of vehicles, filtered past them. So try and work out what the benefits really are. Getting past a few cars often doesn't get us any further up the road, but it does put us at considerably more risk. Now, some time ago when I was discussing this issue, somebody said that all we had to do was read the section in Motorcycle Roadcraft, which is dedicated to applying the system of motorcycle control to overtaking. The implication was follow Roadcraft and you'll master overtaking, and then you can overtake as much as you want because you'll be safe. But the problem is that Roadcraft doesn't tell us, and this is what Survival Skills does seek to address, it doesn't tell us why it is that riders who've done all the right things still get it wrong. Now, one issue that we really need to think about is our cognitive ability. Research strongly suggests that overtaking on the open road is an activity where we are operating beyond the limits of human mental and perceptual capacity and beyond the limits of our own vision as well. So it's how we actually manage the conflict between wanting to overtake and the risks that would ensue if we did that determine how safe we are. And notice I used the word manage. That's very deliberate. I didn't use the word master. I'm not saying all overtaking is dangerous, but if we do get it wrong, we're unlikely to walk away from an overtaking crash. And the idea that we have total control over events when we're overtaking is a nonsense. It's an impossible aspiration. So rather than persuade ourselves that we've done everything right and nothing can possibly go wrong, which was basically what that police instructor was telling me all those years ago, a far better method, in my opinion, is to acknowledge that we make mistakes. So if we start from that position, then it's far easier to work towards safer overtaking by seeking to gain an understanding of where overtaking errors happen. And then we can try to eliminate them. And then by taking out overtakes that don't get us anywhere, we can eliminate at least some of the risk that we face while we're making that maneuver. So watch out for a live webcast on overtaking soon. That's it for another show. So just a couple of quick reminders. Throughout the rest of August and in September, I'm still running evening riding assessments. So do drop me a line if you'd like to have your riding checked over objectively. The next live Science of Being Seen presentation is on the first Wednesday of October. But before that, I'm offering you one on cornering with confidence. That's on Wednesday, the 1st of September. And that will basically explore the techniques that I cover during my practical online sessions, but with specific look at what are called reference points and how we can work those into our riding to give us a kind of roadmap of where we are on the road in the middle of a corner. And that basically is how we time our machine inputs and pick a line through that bend. So there's the link if you're interested in having a look at what that show is all about. Tickets are £5 again. That's 8 p.m. on Wednesday, the 1st of September, cornering with confidence. So that's it from me today. Stay safe out there. If it does brighten up today and you get out, enjoy your ride, and I'll be back with another 11s on Wednesday. So thanks again for looking in. This is Kevin Williams of Survival.